we sign a client, how do we come up with the right content strategy for them? And then how does that engagement evolve over time? How does the content strategy shift as you start working with the client, as you start to get learnings?
And what made us want to do this as an episode was that it actually, the lessons that we're going to be talking about here apply outside of just our agency. We will tell it in terms of our personal stories and our experience because that's what we do, but it actually applies regardless. So if you are just doing content and SEO on your own, you will naturally go through this evolution. You want to prove the two critical parts to content and SEO if you're doing it in the way that we advise, which is to get customers. So the two critical parts are ranking. Can you rank for these target keywords? And how long does that take? How high does Google seem to get you in a reasonable period of time? It's ranking. And the second half is conversion. Okay, today we want to talk about the multiple different stages of content and SEO and the evolution. This is something we've been thinking about a lot. It's near and dear to our hearts right now because we have a few clients, many clients now, that are pretty far along in the engagement. And so they've reached what we're going to talk about as kind of tier 3. And, but we keep, as per our monthly updates, getting new clients, and those are starting the engagement. And so they are what we're going to talk about as tier 1. And what we have noticed, and you articulated this better so you can describe it, is that, like, I think our mindset early on, definitely when we started the agency, which is, I don't know, 7 years ago or something now, was like, it's just one thing. Like, we have our bottom of funnel method. We have our method that gets leads better than normal people doing content that just gets traffic and no leads. And we're just going to apply it. You're a big, we'll apply it today. We'll apply it in 12 months. We'll apply it in 24 months, 36 months, whatever. And what we've noticed, especially in the past few years, is actually the engagement starts to look a lot different when you're 3 years in, even 2 years, even in a year and a half, it starts to look a little bit different than it does in month 1 or month 6.
Yeah, I mean, I can expand on that. I think some people, when they see our agency, just think, oh, you have a productized service. So that means the strategy or what you actually deliver to each client doesn't change. And that's not true. So what stays constant is the number of deliverables, so the number of articles or the number of keywords that we target per month. But the strategy can differ a ton based on the type of client. So if it's a SaaS business versus a service business, what stage of the company they're at? Are they just starting? Is this someone that's been doing content for a really long time? And so we kind of wanted to talk through what that thinking is. If we sign a client, how do we come up with the right content strategy for them? And then how does that engagement evolve over time? So how does the content strategy shift as you start working with the client, as you start to get learnings? And yeah, I think it would probably help to just talk through different client scenarios, like what happens when a client starts with us and they're just starting out with content marketing and they don't really have a ton of content, versus we have some companies that have thousands of articles or they've gone after hundreds or thousands of keywords and we're now starting to work with them. And so how does that engagement shift, or what is the content strategy differences for the different types of businesses that we work with?
Yeah, and what made us want to do this as an episode was that it actually, the lessons that we're going to be talking about here apply outside of just our agency. We will tell it in terms of our personal stories and our experience because that's what we do, but it actually applies regardless. So if you are just doing content and SEO on your own, you will naturally go through this evolution. So here are the 3 tiers. Tier 1 is the beginning, when you're first going after your first few target keywords. An underlying assumption in this discussion is going to be that you are going after a decent amount of these being bottom of the funnel keywords. If you're just like doing, this is going to be a bit of an aside, but like if you're just doing content kind of the way that we say is non-optimal, that we fix and we are a solution for, and our process is a solution for, of just like, you're producing, you're more interested in the content calendar and some sort of volume of publications, and you're picking keywords based on like search volume, and you're just trying to accumulate traffic. A lot of what we will talk about does apply, but it's not kind of as important because you're just kind of like adding more content to get more traffic or whatever. What we're talking about is like, if you are using content in SEO very carefully and strategically, and each ranking you get is very business valuable, and losing it is a big deal because you were getting customers from that ranking, then this very much applies. And that's the situation we're in. Every time we get a ranking for a client, almost every time, it's like that thing is producing leads, trials, demos, sales form fills, whatever. And so maintaining that is important. So tier 1 is just proving out the process, which is the first few months. For some companies, it can last 6 months plus 9 months, maybe. It shouldn't really last you into a year. You should move into tier 2, which is scaling, which we'll talk about in a second. But that tier 1 is actually, let me just quickly say,
I think tier 1 is just simply how quickly and how easily can you generate rankings and conversions. It's just getting like setting that baseline for each of the clients that we work with, or each of the companies. Like, how long is it going to take to start getting those first page 1 rankings based on a few different things, based on the domain rating of the company, the content that they published before, the topical authority of the site. And sometimes you can have all of those things working for you, and you still go to publish something and you don't get rankings as quickly as you would have thought, or the conversions don't come as easily as you would have thought. And so we'll talk through why in some of those cases, and like what we're looking for.
Yeah. So just to recap, or just to foreshadow, it's going to be tier 1, start and prove out the basics. Tier 2, scale. Tier 3, maintain and continue to scale. So tier 1, you want to prove the 2 critical parts to content and SEO. If you're doing it in the way that we advise, which is to get customers. So the 2 critical parts are ranking. As Benji said, can you rank for these target keywords? And how long does that take? How high does Google seem to get you in a reasonable period of time? It's ranking. And the second half, the second metric, let's say, that you want to prove out is conversion. Obviously, if you get the ranking in like that first one, the first thing you want to prove out, you're going to get traffic. That's why I'm skipping traffic. Of course, if you get, unless you're ranking for a keyword with no volume, that's like a whole other. We need to do a second episode on the volume thing. There's some online chatter about search volume, but anyway, you're going to get traffic. So that's why it's like, doesn't matter. The ranking will equal traffic. The question mark that you need to prove to yourself is, and does that traffic convert? Which you should Google Pain Point SEO if you need a refresher on this. Which is the way that's what it is, a commentary on the keyword you selected and your product's value proposition, or kind of like how compelling your product is in that space. And we can give some examples in a second. I know I'm being very theoretical. And how well did you write the piece to convey those value propositions? And the goal of tier 1 is prove the process start to finish. I'll let you go into specifics on either ranking or conversions. You can pick one, I'll do the other. But I want to just say, like, first, from like kind of like a political, like intercompany perspective and your like psychology perspective, this is really important. I think a lot of people are just like worried about the scale part, like, I want to get to the total number of leads. But like, we found as an agency, an outside vendor, getting that first few things where you're like, we targeted, enterprise IT software. We are ranking number 3 for enterprise IT software. And look at this demo, and that demo came from that. Just doing that and not worry about scale, like showing like start to finish the whole thing working. We picked a keyword, we ranked for it, and that thing led to demos. That has a huge psychological boost on us, on the client, which is usually like our point of contact, who's our champion, and then on their bosses. the leadership, whatever, who's like signing the checks. And that's true if you're not us. That's true if you're internal, like you're the marketing hire or whatever, and you're reporting to executives. That's also true, I think, if you are by yourself. If you are a founder doing this by yourself initially, like you just, there's like a self, it's like you're your own board of directors you need to convince. Because if you're not convinced, you're going to end up doing that kind of like marketing shiny object syndrome. You've written about this a long time ago. You can Google shiny object syndrome, grow and convert, of just like, if you're not convinced yourself, you're going to be like, nah, and then start chasing some other tactic. And so that's why I think tier one's really important in my estimation.
Yeah, I think you hit on a good point, which is I think people immediately jump to trying to figure out how to scale their content marketing program, and you need to step back and just figure out if it's going to work. And so maybe let's talk about what the first 6 months of our engagement looks like, because in our mindset, the 6 months is really just about initially proving this out. And so in our engagements, we start off by doing kickoff sessions, typically with sales, product, or anyone who's customer facing, just to learn about the business, try to figure out what the differentiators are, what the pain points of the customers are. All that information then gets taken into the content strategy that we're going to do for the company. We've talked a lot about SEO so far, but as we've talked about, and we just recently published a post on, there's also sometimes that we do a disruption story right at the very beginning to try to drive results quickly if there's enough differentiation in the business. But regardless of the disruption story or the SEO part, on the SEO side, what we're really looking for is to figure out if we publish a piece, after we publish, without even building links, just where does that rank? And that ranking position typically gives us a good indication of what future keywords that we should go after, how easy it's going to be for us to rank on an ongoing basis. And it kind of just dictates that content strategy going forward. And so typically what we would want to see after we publish, let's say, the first 3 to 6 posts, is that the pieces are starting to rank somewhere on page 2 or page 3. That after the first few months. So like right after publishing, within the first month or so after publishing, we're really looking to see if the pieces that we publish rank in position 20 to 30. Sometimes we'll get lucky and it'll immediately go on the first page, but that's more of an indication of a company that's been doing content for a long time. They have a strong domain authority already. They have topical authority on whatever topic we're writing about. And so that's a little bit more rare. But yeah, if something's ranking right after publishing without links in position 20 or 30, typically a good indication for us that we should be able to move those pieces up. Now, there are some extreme cases where it's a brand new site, or they haven't been publishing for a long time, or
it's just a competitive space.
A competitive space or a competitive keyword as well, where we publish something and it immediately goes to 50, 60, or sometimes it just doesn't even show up in Ahrefs or whatever we're using to track rankings.
I think a quick example to make what you're saying concrete, so just hold your train of thought of where you were going, is like the keyword matters a lot, is what I was thinking when you were explaining like where you're going to rank. So for example, if I just continue on the IT thing, just because like we don't have any clients that are going after that keyword, so I can kind of freely discuss it without worrying about revealing a client's strategy. So like, let's say you do have some kind of IT security software. And I haven't done the keyword research for this, but I can kind of guess because we've done so many similar ones. Something like IT security software, enterprise IT security, is going to be probably really competitive, because I'm guessing those deals are worth a ton. So there's probably a good chunk of VC-backed startups that are spending a ton of money on both the organic and paid search for those keywords. And let's just assume, for sake of this discussion, those are very competitive. Big domains, VC-backed, huge number of links, blah, 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 right? Like, and the organic side is really competitive. For that, on Benji's story, on the ranking side, that 1 month he mentioned to make sure you're on page 2 or 3, maybe it's 2 months. Maybe it's longer. So then the other part of keyword selection, and I apologize if you were going to go here anyways, is if I was the listener, I'd be like, well, then what do I do? is you try to look for slightly longer tail keywords with still have buying intent. And we've talked about this in a couple of our posts. Painpoint SEO talks about the 3 categories of buying keywords in our estimation. Category keywords, which is what we're talking about, like IT security software. That's your category. And then competitors and alternatives, we're going to leave that aside for a second and jobs to be done. There are these nuances inside category keywords. For example, maybe you sell IT security software where the software can be on premise, not on the cloud. So if you add that qualifier, something that was a really competitive keyword that's like IT security software or enterprise IT security, you could add on-premise IT security software and probably the amount of competition plummets. So then you have, and I want you to speak to this because I don't know if I have a direct answer and I don't know if there is like a clear answer. How do you think about in that tier 1, where we're saying tier 1 of content and SEO is just prove this out start to finish? How do you think about choosing between getting an early start on those competitive keywords? You're like, listen, I don't care enterprise IT security is software is competitive. That's what we do. And my CEO is like, we want to rank for this. That's what you're hired for, or something like that. Versus let's get the early quicker win by some longer tail modifiers like on-premise, blah, 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 that maybe could rank earlier. How should they think about making that decision?
That's a good question. So when we compile the first, let's say, 3 months of ideas, when we start an engagement, what we're always looking for is a mix. So we don't want to over-index on just one type of keyword. So in your example, it would be the category keywords. We don't want to go after 3 months worth of different variations of the category keyword, because exactly what you say, you could come up in a situation where this industry that you're in is extremely competitive. And even if you publish 6 pieces going after different variations, that category can be so competitive that none of those pieces might rank in those first few months. And so when we're thinking about putting together a content strategy, we typically do a mix of one category keyword, one alternatives keyword, and maybe a couple jobs to be done keywords, and or a category keyword with a more specific clarifier like you're talking about. And what we want to do is publish, like, let's say 4 of those in the first 2 months. So we typically do 1 piece in the first month and then 3 following. And so those first 4 keywords, we would want to see a mix. And then what we're looking for in Rank Tracker is just which ones seem to have an easier time ranking. And that will kind of give us an indication on which keywords to focus on more in those first few months of the engagement, and then which ones are going to be more difficult to go after. So in the example that I was kind of sharing before, let's say we published a category keyword and it didn't even make it in Rank Tracker. Like, it's just not even showing up. That tells us, okay, the category keywords are probably going to be a lot more competitive. So we might have to go after a jobs to be done keyword, some like long tail how-to keyword, or like you said, we might need to put a more specific clarifier on the category keyword that is easier to go after. And then so that is going to be the thought process going forward if we start to see that the rankings are not really taking hold and they're really competitive. If they are in that 20 to 30 area, that tells us, okay, we can actually compete in this area, and we'll start to just do more of those. And so again, kind of like how we talked about in the video on hiring your first marketing and test and measure, this whole first stage is just testing. It's testing different keyword frameworks, putting things out there, seeing how they rank, and that will indicate to us, should we do more of these, or should we maybe focus on a slightly different framework going forward?
Yeah. I think that's important. Like, I think there are some people that are like, let's just go for it. Like, we go after our biggest ones. And I think it's just, for that, I would say just trust us across, I don't know, dozens and dozens of clients over 6-7 years. Like, you need those wins, and even the small wins are the ones you can point to in the hard discussions with leadership about whether to continue, whether it's working. Like, those questions are going to come up, and you need those kind of like case studies of like, look at this, even though the volume is small, look at it, it worked all the way through. We got this demo and that demo from it. That's a good one. Conversions.
Yeah, I was going to go there next too. So I was going to say, okay, so you start ranking for things, And our goal is to get every single article that we're publishing on page one, and specifically in the top three positions, because we've just seen without getting in those top three positions, it's really difficult to drive conversions. And that's typically when conversions start scaling. But there are also times where we start ranking for something, and even though it's ranking in position 1 through 3, it's not really driving conversions. And that kind of indicates something else to us, that there's typically a deeper problem beyond just content. There's either some problem in the way that the product is positioned.
It's a
or,
big deal. I'm just
Yeah.
going to cut to the chase. Like if you're ranking in top one position 1, 2, and 3 for a keyword that kind of obviously has buying intent. For your first few keywords, there should be no debate whether there's buying intent. It should be really obvious. If you sell IT security software and you're ranking in positions 1, 2, and 3 for IT security software or any modifiers added to it, and since I don't know much about that space, I just kind of made that up. We can turn it to something that we all know, like CRMs or something, like small business CRM. If you make a small business CRM and you're ranking positions 1, 2, and 3 for small business CRM, and you cannot measure, you're not measuring any conversions directly attributable to it. I'm sorry to like overblow it. That's kind of a big deal. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a deeper problem. So we try to solve for that up front. Just when we vet clients, we're typically trying to see that they have some cold channel that is driving leads to their business already. That meaning, like, if they have Google ads going and they're kind of targeting the same keywords and that's converting, then content should work. If you don't have that, and let's say you've grown your business fully off referrals or your network or something like that, you kind of run the risk of running into this problem that we're talking about here, which is you can start ranking for things and it not working. And the reasoning is because the website could be unproven as a sales tool. So in the referral example, you could be getting introductions to leads through your network or through someone who's promoting you, and they're explaining the value of the business for you, essentially, and they're going into way more detail. And you could get to the website from cold traffic, someone who hasn't had the business explained as well, and the website just doesn't really sell the value of your service well enough to convince someone to sign up for a trial or whatever the conversion action is. And so what we're typically looking for in this stage one is, one, do your articles rank? How quickly do they rank? That will determine what mix of keywords that you go after going forward. And then 2, do things convert? And if not, we typically have an internal discussion in terms of why, or maybe we just question whether this is even a good client for us, because if we're ranking for things and it's not converting, there's usually a bigger business issue.
It can mean that the value proposition is not great, or there's other commentary in that market that the client doesn't have a great offering in the market. There's just better tools. And that's something we take a lot of care vetting carefully in the first few sales conversations. And even in the email exchanges before we even get on the phone with a prospect who wants to work with us, because for us in our position, we want clients to last as long as possible. See some of our early videos in this series. And if it's not converting, they're not going to last that long because it's not generating ROI. And although everyone thinks their business is good and their offer is good and their product is great, it's not true. Some of the products are not great. And I want to touch, so that's the big, potentially like big ugly reason why that would be like a big problem. There's a second problem that you did not mention that we sort of don't worry about because we're very confident in our writing, but it could be true for some listener who's doing this themselves. Your writing could be bad. Like you could have written well enough to rank. So your writing is good for Google and its algorithm, but not for humans. And what do I mean? You rank. That means you you did your clear scope or whatever, like you got your on-page SEO down, your backlink thing is good and your topical authority is good. And for whatever reason, like you satisfied Google, great. But now you have another job which is to convince the humans who are Googling this presumably bottom of funnel phrase, small business CRM, enterprise IT security software, whatever, to choose yours. Not choose, but maybe start a trial or request a demo. And we have seen many things ranking where when you read it as a human, you're just like, what is this? Or it's just, I mean, maybe it's not even what the, but you're just like it just kind of seems like ho hum. It's the same. The features and the benefits are the same as everyone else. It's like this joke that Benji and I make on service businesses of development shops. Every software development shop has the same thing that they say that they think sounds unique, but actually everyone else says it, which is like, the difference is we take your ideas from the beginning, from sketches, and we like prove it out all the way to launch. And you're like, wow, like super unique. And then just Google your other 5 competitors. They say the exact same thing, right? That's an issue, is like, maybe your value prop and your differentiators and just like you're competitive in the marketplace is just not good. And like, this is just not going to work. That's a big issue. It's a product market fit issue. But also, even if you have product market fit, if you don't write the content well and sell the product well and highlight the right differentiators, etc., and the piece isn't written well, it's not going to convert that well. Potentially not really. And we have some stuff happening now where we are rewriting some old stuff that's ranking for a client and it's starting to convert better. And we've done that. We have engagements where clients have asked us, in addition to our normal process of producing new pieces, to go back and update the articles ranking that other people that they've hired in the past have written, to kind of grow and convertify it to sell their articles. And we've seen conversions show up where there weren't any previously. So those are 2 big things.
Well, and in that case, it's not even just updating old pieces to help it rank better. It's updating old pieces to help sell the product better, because the writer didn't do a good job of articulating the value props and the differentiator and setting up the piece well.
Or they just didn't sell. There's like a ton of people who just are not doing bottom of funnel. They have the old fashioned way of content marketing where it's like, give, don't ask. And they're just like, I'm just going to give how-to advice. And it's like weird. It's like inappropriate to sell the product. And you're like, of course it's not going to convert if you're not actually mentioning the product. So that's tier 1. Again, to recap, 2 things you're trying to check off on tier 1. Number 1, ranking. How fast can you, how high, et cetera? How long does it take? How many backlinks does it take, et cetera? Number 2, conversion. Once you get the rankings, of course you're going to get traffic, but how well does it convert? And then that can start to give you an idea to move into tier 2, which is scale. And that's kind of what everyone wants. They want to get to this, which is, what's the top number? How much can I grow my pipeline, my demos, my free trials a month by if I invested a lot in content, or if we ranked for 100 keywords or something like that. So I will approach scaling from a numbers and estimate perspective. I'm curious to sort of pass the baton to you and say, like, does anything change, or you're just doing tier 1 over and over again in tier 2? Or how do you think about like kind of strategy and approaching kind of that? Okay, we have a few. I should say, the way you know it is like, okay, you like have a few pieces that have proven both things out in tier 1. You got a few things in the top 5 spots, top 3 spots, and then you're starting to measure some demos. It's working. Now what?
To some extent, things don't change, and to some extent they do. So I can kind of walk through the thinking, but yeah, so you've put out, let's say, the first 4 or 6 pieces, and you're trying to figure out what topics either have an easier time ranking, what frameworks have an easier time ranking, and then in combination with which articles or topics have high search volume and high intent. So obviously, as we are trying to focus on the keywords that have both high intent and high search volume, just because if we can find that combination, it usually equals higher conversions in the long run. But there's also other factors to take into consideration, like time to rank. So in the example earlier of let's say a category keyword that's ranking in position 20, 30, or 50 plus, those keywords might take 6 months, 3 to 6 months to get that to the first page. And so even though that keyword has high conversion potential over the long term, in the short term, it might not drive anything for the business. And so as we're starting to think about scaling, we're still thinking of a mix of content ideas, because there's going to be content ideas that you can publish that are super high intent that maybe other companies haven't really targeted, because the search volume is lower than what they would typically want to go after. But if we were to publish that piece, it can rank on page one within a month or two. And so that piece will drive an immediate impact to the business. Whereas some of those heavy hitters that we like to call them could take months to start to rank. And so as we're thinking of scaling, we're taking into consideration just where the pieces are ranking, how long it's taking to move them up into those first pages, and really thinking of the combination of ideas that we can start to move the overall level of conversions higher. The other aspect is the link building side. We've talked about this before as well. This is somewhat of an art and somewhat of a science. We don't tend to build a ton of links to each piece after we publish them. Again, it's this test and measure approach where we'll build one link to each piece and see how much that one link moves the ranking position of that piece. And that will also give us an indication of how easy that piece is going to be to move up. And so it's a combination of figuring out where keywords rank without links, and then how easy they are to move up with links. And it's the combination of both of those two things that give us a better idea of what content ideas that we should focus on an ongoing basis and what we're going to pitch to clients.
Yeah, I think that there's a dance there on the first part of what you said of continuing to do some of the easier wins, even if they are maybe lower volume and or less competitive, in order for you to keep the kind of results flowing, the growth going,
to keep the results moving up. Because if you don't do this, and let's say you focus on all the competitive stuff first, that first 6 to 9 months could look really bad from a conversion perspective. You could start to generate rankings, and maybe you're seeing a ton of your rankings in position 20 and 30, but from a conversion perspective, as we said before, unless they're on page one or in those top 3 positions, you're not really driving conversions for them. So if you're an internal employee, or if you're an agency trying to report to your point of contact or your higher up, even though the rankings are starting to move and you can show progress, you're not really seeing the results of conversions. And so you could get a lot of pushback from your client or your internal stakeholders saying, what's going on? Why isn't this working yet? And so the combination of mixing in those high intent ideas that are less competitive to target is really important to keep the overall conversion graph going up.
Yeah. The funny thing I've noticed human psychology wise is that even if you're deeper into scaling, like it's not like where are the results? Like you've had some, you've already ranked for a few, and you've already proven out that and you've gotten some conversions from them. Like good results set the expectation of continued good results. So even if you have good results for the first 6 months, if you the last couple months just did some of those long-term pieces, you're going to get this lull all of a sudden where you had published a bunch of real competitive ones and you don't get any more growth. And then the powers that be, whether in our case, it's the client, but even if you're in-house, it's your VP or your CEO, or if you're by yourself, it's your own expectations of yourself. The powers that be start to get spoiled. And they're like, why is the growth stalling? What are we doing wrong or whatever? And so you have to explain that away. So it's always good to keep stuff that are continued growing. I did want to talk about this is a place where you can start to build out something we often do for clients, which is some kind of basic estimate and growth model if you need to, if you care. So a few things on the quantitative side. First of all, I realized halfway through this recording, we're just assuming you know how to measure these conversions. We can point out in the show notes, I guess, Benji, where to look at that. But I think if you Google GA4 Grow and Convert, you can find our how to measure conversions in GA4 article, a written article. And I don't know if we have some videos. We have old videos.
Yeah, you could go look through the YouTube as well on GA4.
Yeah, but in short, you should be measuring conversions, whether it's in GA or whether it's through some other tool, HubSpot, blah, 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 on a multi-touch basis, not just last touch. It shouldn't just be same session. You're going to be undercounting because there's going to be people who Google this kind of content and then they take another session or two or more to come back and later request a demo, and you want to make sure you're getting credit for that. But scaling estimating model, a few things. Basic level. At some point in kind of this tier 2 phase, which is not well defined, we're not like 6 months have passed, we are now in tier 2. Like, no one says that, right? We're creating these tiers for this recording to help people understand the different phases and how to think about it. But when you're starting to scale, the first thing is we start to now report on, measure, look at ourselves, just number of conversions per month, a graph. If you don't do any fancy model, just the graph tells you a lot. Visually graph it, because the visual graph helps you do a few things. Number one, if you have an uptrend, it's kind of like good, pat yourself on the back, like things to like show the CEO and power, whatever. Like there's like a visual element to it. But it does this other more subtle thing. When you inevitably get a slight downturn, a graph helps everyone, and the like kind of human eye and the psychology behind it, see that the overall trend is still positive. And that's something that drives both you and I crazy, is that there will be clients, like speaking of people getting spoiled of success, is they're just like, well, but why? Like this was going up or whatever. Like, it was happening. And the last month has been a downturn. There's also some reporting stuff we advise on our team, is like, everyone tends to be like, last month we got X, this month it's Y. And I've been like coaching a lot of our team of like, there's gonna be fluctuations. It's insane to assume something like search marketing is gonna have this totally consistent trend. This is life. It's gonna be up and down. And so
There's a lot of times where we'll rank number 1 for a piece and it'll drop to number 3, or it'll drop to number 5 randomly.
and nothing is wrong.
Yeah, nothing's wrong. And then the client comes to us and they're like, what's wrong? This has been a piece that has historically driven a ton of conversions. It dropped out of that position 1. What should we do? And to us, oftentimes the answer is nothing. Let's just wait and see, because Google is often testing some stuff, or there's a new article that gets published. There's new competition that comes in the SERP, and it can push you out for a short period of time, and then you can bounce back. And so I do think your point on looking at the engagement holistically or over a longer time frame is really important, because if you have monthly check-ins, or you have one-to-ones with your manager, and you're focusing on this month versus last month, there's always a lot of fluctuations that are going to happen. From a traffic perspective, like I know people got hit with the Google update in March, and there might have been a period of decline, and then maybe now the traffic has started picking back up, and you could make the mistake of thinking, oh, something's completely wrong with our strategy and we need to completely change everything. Or a piece drops out of position 1 for a month and you're like, oh, we need to update this piece. And if you have the bigger picture view of just, okay, maybe a couple pieces decline, but overall our rankings going up. If so, like, let's see how this plays out over a couple months, instead of just jumping to the conclusion that we need to immediately do something. Or you might have 1 month that's down on the conversion front, but if the trend is overall up and it can bounce back in a couple months, again, it's not a reason to freak out. And I think if you're measuring things only on a month-to-month basis, it can make you do things that are actually negative towards your progress.
Yeah. It's weird how many companies run marketing like they are like some industrial factory operation. Like they read some like business book from some like like Peter Drucker. What's measured gets
We
managed.
were producing 1,200 products last month, and then for some reason the factory got shut down. We're only 11.
Yeah, you're not like an oil refinery that's like every day they're like looking at these scales and these like dials or whatever. But everyone like runs their company that way, or like CMO types do it, and they're just like, did you hit your numbers this month? And then that gets like passed down to rank and file. Or agencies or something like us, and you need to be able to like fight that back. So number 1 thing is graph it. Then you can also start to do some like long-term estimates. I can't describe all of this in this video. Maybe you can ask in comments or whatever.
I think you have videos that have gone into this in the past.
Yeah, I've had videos that gone into it, but just like real quick, you can start to do some things like this. Like, and I'll just say verbally what you should start to look at. How many conversions per month are you getting on these pieces, like by piece, regardless of the search volume. I know it doesn't sound right, but promise me I have the spreadsheets to back up this statement. There are trends we've seen that it's like we've seen demos have a real nice relationship to just number of page one rankings, regardless of search volume. I know it goes against a lot of things that like SEO people say. I don't care what they say because I have the numbers to back up my statements. Number two, you can look at conversion rate. You're smiling because I'm very like confrontational right now. You can look at conversion rate to start to get some estimates as well, right? Okay, so like when we get a certain amount of volume for these pieces, traffic, what's the conversion rate? Is it 2%, 5%, 10%, whatever? And yes, you can get 10, you can get 15% conversion rate from organic traffic to demos or to trials. You can start to look at that and just start to do some back of the roughly envelope math. Like, okay, if we have 5 pieces ranking in the top few spots, all with search volume in the hundreds, let's say, per month, and that's creating 15, 20 directly attributable free trials a month, you can do some rough back of the envelope and be like, well, if we want to hit 100, that's going to require 25 pieces. And it's not going to be perfectly accurate, but you can at least set reasonable expectations. So if leadership is like, we need you to hit 2,000, you're going to be like, whoa. Like, we have 5 page one rankings. They are our best keywords by definition, because why wouldn't we have gone after those first? And we have 20. We're not getting to 2,000 anytime soon. Like, just like slow, like we need to like set expectations. You can do those like big picture expectation setting and start to look at that. The other thing you can do is start to roughly calculate ROI. Figure out how much a demo or a free trial is worth to you. The way you figure that out is, how much is a first year client, like paying customer, worth to you? It's worth $1,000, let's say. And then our trial to paid rate is 10%. So the trial is worth $100. So then if a piece is getting you 5 trials, it's getting you $500 of revenue a month, roughly on average or something. You can start to like roughly go to those numbers and be like, how much pipeline is this driving? Like in tier 2, you can start to play with that. Again, I can't cover that in full detail here. There are other videos, but that's something that you can like start to realistically get a sense of. Just keep in mind that like as you do this, the numbers and the inputs you have itself get refined. Like your conversion rate is going to change as you get some more data or whatever. But that's tier 2. And then something that we've been thinking about a lot with a bunch of clients recently, tier 3. Let me set the stage. This is over a year into the engagement. This is, you have 20, 30, or in our case with some clients, over 100 page 1 or top 5 rankings. Then something very interesting happens, which is you need to start defending your rankings, updating your pieces, and maintaining. And we had to learn the lesson of that takes just as much, if not more, effort than publishing new pieces to get new rankings did at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree with that. I think the engagement shifts a lot. And I don't think people think about this enough, because I think when people hire us, they automatically think new content. And what we've noticed is a year, 2, 3 years in the engagement, you start to see a lot of those rankings that historically were in position 1, 2, or 3 start to decline and decay over time. A number of reasons for that. One, the intent of the query changes. And so when you wrote the piece, Google interpreted it as one meaning, and now that meaning has slightly changed over time. And so you need to update the piece to then better satisfy the current search intent. 2, you just have new competition. So a lot of people will see your content strategy, like your competitors. They'll start to say, oh, this company is starting to really kill it on the content side. We should just mimic exactly what they're doing. And we've seen this happen a number of times with clients that we've worked with, where their competitors, you all of a sudden start to see them showing up for every single keyword that you've targeted. And then it becomes a really competitive game of just outdoing them on the
contenting
content
them. You're going to turn content into a verb.
Exactly.
and
we're coming up with new words.
Benji's not making this up. Like, SEO software is kind of made to do this. How many of these Ahrefs and SEM rushes of the world talk about their competitive analysis tools? Like, so much of the SEO culture is about analyzing the heck out of what your competitors are doing. So if you start ranking for the most competitive keywords, people are going to notice. And even though most people don't do content and SEO the way we do, they chase traffic. And you'd be like, oh, but they're doing the traffic chasing way and I'm doing the grow and convert method. That's fine. You know where they're going to notice you? In paid. Because paid search does go after bottom of funnel. Because paid search people are not stupid. They know that they're paying for each click. So they need conversions. And then people will start to notice. We have seen this literally, like rando competitors that we thought were not a big deal, publishing every single post just like we did for our clients. Same style, same structure, same methodology, just total copycat.
The last factor that could potentially impact the need to update things is Google algorithm updates. So sometimes an update will come and it just completely changes the meaning of different queries or the organization or what it values more. And so that could also be a case where then you need to go back in and update certain pieces. And so, yeah, all this to say the engagement after a year or two really shifts from new content of 3 articles or however many articles you do. Some of our clients, we do way more than that. But as a baseline, just the number of articles you're producing, we start to shift more to like half and half, or maybe even sometimes skewing like 2/3 of the content that we're doing on a monthly basis is just updating old posts. And why? You could say like, well, why would a company pay you to do that? You already created an article.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you did a bad job.
Yeah, no, it's just like what's valuable is the keywords that you're going after. And so if you historically had a piece that was ranking number 1, driving 100 conversions a month, and that drops to position 5, and now you're only getting 25 for that, like it's way worth it to go back and update that piece to get that conversion volume back up.
But what if someone said the fact that it dropped, it means you didn't do your job well?
I mean, I just gave 3 different factors of reasons why it's dropping. I mean,
that has nothing to do with you.
It has nothing to do with if you historically ranked well. It has nothing to do with like you doing a bad job. If it never ranked, then I could make that argument that there's probably something wrong in your process. But if you've historically ranked on first page, and especially in those top 3 positions for a keyword, and you've dropped and that ranking isn't moving back up, you're going to need to do something to get that ranking back. And again, I think from a business perspective, you need to think about how valuable that keyword is to the business. After a year, 2, 3, 4 years into engagement, there might not be a ton of new keywords that you could go after that are going to drive that 100 conversions. And so for you, it's way more worth it for you to spend the time to go back and update that piece that has historically converted at a way higher rate than most of the pieces that you've done, than go after a new piece. And so the engagement switches from, okay, we can continue growing overall conversions by going after some new articles. Again, at this point in engagement, there's probably not a ton that have really high conversion potential. So 2 things might happen. We might go after very long tail keywords, or we might just start moving up the funnel and going after higher traffic things at this point in the engagement. And then simultaneously going in and making sure that we can continue to own our most valuable keywords from a ranking perspective. And so that is kind of how things shift. And one thing I'll make on this point, just in terms of defending the rankings, is the writing. I do think the writing is really important here, because what we said about competition coming in and just copying you, if you have really unique content, or you have well argued arguments inside of your pieces, your intros are different, you're speaking from first person experience, it's much harder to unseat you. And where we see people get unseated a lot more is when you're producing content that's just kind of the same as everyone else. You're creating the same list post as everyone else. You go into the SERPs and you're analyzing the keyword, and you're seeing what everyone else has done. Everyone's done 20 top content marketing tools, and you're also going to do maybe 21 top content marketing tools. But when you're like, oh, just that one more, I swear we're going to beat them. But it's typically not a number of software that you list. It's not a number of tools that you list in your piece. It typically has to do with what information are you providing that no one else is. And that's what typically helps you to rank. And so I would refer back to the video that we did, I think 2 or 3 videos ago, where Davish walked through interviewing someone and then just differentiation in the article. I think that is very, very important when it comes to defending the rankings. And when we're going back into an old piece and we're updating it, that is kind of the lens that we're looking at this through is, okay, what unseated us and what is the reason that we think that they're unseating us? Like, is there some new information that they provided? Is there a different section? Did they take a completely different approach to the article than we did? And it's a lot of that thinking. And so, yeah, for a lot of our clients, they're in the stage 3 right now where we're like, our whole engagement is around maintaining rankings, so getting old rankings back and then simultaneously going after new pieces. The other place that stage 3 can make a lot of sense or come into play, even at the beginning of an engagement, is if a content client has been doing content for years. They've done content for 5 years. They have thousands of articles on their site. This would be like a HubSpot or something as an example.
And then you got hot. Well, no, HubSpot's extreme, but
but that's an example of a company that has tons of content. There's probably no new bottom of the funnel content ideas that you can go after, but the value of each of their keywords is immense. And so it would be taking the same framework that we have of what are the most high intent keywords for their business, where did they historically rank for those pieces? And can we go back and update some of those pieces to either better sell their product and or get the rankings back because someone unseated them for some reason?
I'm going to make a semi-controversial statement and tell me if you disagree. The fact that we're saying you have the engagement moves to maintaining the rankings when you have a ton, 30, 40, 50, 100. And you're also saying correctly, and this should be obvious, like you're not going to, in year 3, you're not going to have the same level of like obvious bottom of funnel keywords. So like each new piece you produce, even when that thing ranks, is not going to convert as well as the first few, because like you don't have, like when you're at the keyword 150, there's not just these like perfect intents for someone Googling for your software. You took care of those keywords in the first 10, first 20, first 50. Does that mean that there's almost a natural kind of maximum conversions a month from organic or SEO? That after a while, growth becomes harder because, one, you got to put some of your resources into defending the old rankings you had instead of getting new ones. And number 2, all the new ones you're getting are by definition not going to convert as highly. And there may be a period where you're like, we've kind of maximized SEO, but it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say yes and no. That like you're not going to be able to grow as quickly. So in those first 2 to 3 years, you're probably looking at a graph that does look like a hockey stick, and you're starting to see conversions really grow, especially if you're starting content from scratch. Yeah, if you're 5-10 years into content and you've gone after like all these bottom of the funnel, it's going to level off. Like I can imagine like HubSpot, like their traffic probably looks pretty steady over the last 5 years. I mean, maybe they're acquiring new domains and they're doing other things to grow traffic. But yeah, overall, like growth will level off. Like there's things that you can do. So again, we say bottom of the funnel first and move up funnel. Again, the highest conversion potential ideas are going to happen at the bottom of the funnel, then the middle of the funnel. And you still might be able to grow traffic a ton. But even if you're going after these really high volume keywords that have less conversion potential, yeah, you can still grow traffic, but the overall conversion volume might not grow as quickly because you're going after keywords with lower conversion rates. And so kind of going back to some concepts that we've talked about in our other videos, yeah, at this point, I would still keep investing in content because, again, you need to maintain those rankings. You don't want conversions to start dropping from this channel, which can definitely happen. You can go from thousands of conversions, have it drop to like half of that. And then someone higher up is being like, well, what is going on? This channel has historically driven this much. You don't want that to happen. So you don't want to like stop investing in content. But at this point, you might want to start thinking about, okay, I don't think the growth from this channel is going to be as high as it was previously. Like maybe our entire business was grown off content up until this point. Maybe now I should start thinking about what other channels I should start testing and where that future growth can come from. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, and some other commentary I'll say. The vast majority of companies are just not doing this. So like don't be like, well, like can I just say this is going to be kind of a silly analogy and you're going to kind of laugh at me, but like you ever talk to someone about like lifting weights or working out and they do this thing where like, well, I don't want to be too muscular. I think that's like a gross look.
That's
me. And you're just like, homie, like that's you?
I mean, kind of joking, but
but my comeback is always like, how do I come back from this without being insulting? Like, right? Like, and Benji's pretty well built, but like for most people, you're like, that's a good problem to have. Like, you should not worry about being too fit. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like that where people are like, well, what are you saying? There's like a top line, like, where my SEO results will like maximize. You're like, yeah. And that would be an amazing problem to have. And the chances of you being anywhere near that are very low. Every company's GA we see, every company's like Ahrefs and their like search profile to see, they haven't done this. They haven't systematically knocked off their bottom of funnel keywords and their middle of funnel keywords. So like if you get to a point where you're 3 years in and you have hundreds of rankings that are prioritized by buying intent, as you could best guess, your best hypotheses of the keywords that are going to buy, right? That are going to have buyers. That is, and then you're seeing results level off from your hockey stick growth. Like, congratulations. Come to San Jose. Like, we'll go out to dinner. It's on me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, congratulations. Like, it would be fun. That's a good problem to have. So I don't think that should like dissuade anyone. And then yes, what Benji's saying happens. Like, we live through it, which is then it's kind of a big deal to executives and leadership when that starts to move down. And like Google and Life, it's like there's going to be competitors. There's going to be movement in search intent. There's going to be algorithm updates. You got to start maintaining that. And that's how it moves. So I just wanted to say that kind of commentary.
Going back to your gym analogy, I think it's a good way to think about it. If you were lifting weights for 2-3 years and you had a great physique and then you just stopped all of a sudden, yeah, you're going to have a slow decline over time. You're not going to look the same. Yeah, you might be well built at the time, but like eventually your muscles are going to go down and you're not going to be as physically fit. And it's the same thing when you're thinking about SEO. It's like, yeah, you could have spent all this time and effort building up the amount of traffic and conversions you get, and then someone internally is like, well, or we're like, I think we're kind of like maxed out in terms of like new opportunities, and like the focus shifts more to let's just maintain the growth that we have. And like, yeah, you can still have growth, but it's not going to be as drastic as the beginning. It's not going to be like when you first went to the gym and you never worked out before, seeing that impact that you immediately have where you start to see muscle definition show up and stuff like that. You're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm seeing so much progress. Like over time, you're seeing incremental growth. And it's the same thing here. But if you just completely stop doing it, which is like some people have had this mindset of like, okay, we've gotten to this point, I'm just going to stop. And then nothing's done internally to maintain those rankings. And then a year or two later, you're like, why did I lose all these rankings? I was at number 1 for all these different things. It's like,
I've been sitting on the couch eating potato chips. Like, why don't I look like I did before? And
yeah,
you're like, I wonder why. and the other thing I'll say where like the workout analogy kind of breaks down, because we're talking about business, that when you get a ton of rankings and you're like basically like kicking ass in SEO, those are really valuable. Like those rankings are really business valuable. So it is a high value activity to maintain those, because losing those means you lose your new customer acquisition. So, and people don't think about that, because you're right. People think money like budget to marketing should equal growth. But the reality is budget to SEO, and then they think SEO is kind of like free. Like I get the ranking and I have it forever. They get paid this kind of leeway. You assume if you pull back paid spend, you're paid trials or free signups are going to go to zero. Obviously, there's some of that in SEO. It's not as SEO is way better, right? Because you don't have to spend every dollar, every click all the time in terms of like dollars in, dollars out. But you're going to need to do something. And what I'm arguing is it is a high value activity, because if you've really maximized this, you're getting a ton of results from it. You got to keep maintaining that. And it's not like that hard. You don't have to update a piece every month. That's ridiculous. It's just like you need to kind of keep up on all of that. Yeah, those are the 3 tiers. Let me just recap. Tier 1, prove things out to yourself, to your bosses, to your clients, whatever. And so do a mix. Like plant the seeds for some of those really valuable keywords that could be harder, but also do some of the lower wins to prove 2 things. Can you rank and how fast? And does it convert and how well? Tier 2, scale. Start picking off keywords systematically and doing that mix. Category keywords, comparison and alternative, jobs to be done, read Pain Point SEO to learn more about those 3, and start to just accumulate rankings and wins, spread your backlinks out, and just kind of grow that. And then at some point, I don't know, did we even tell them when? 30 page 1 rankings, maybe 20, 30, like double digits, 50?
Yeah, I don't think there is a point. I think it's just when you start to see rankings decline or stagnate, that's when stage 3 kicks in.
Yeah, stage 3. And stage 3 is not, this is not binary. It's like you're still doing new content. It's some mix of stage 2 and stage 3. It's like you're going to start to maintain rankings and monitor them. Use your SEO software to monitor them, and make sure that it's, and use your analytics software to monitor the conversions as well. And then you have to start maintaining while going after new ones. If you're doing all 3 of those and you've made it to 3, you're doing a great job.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. You can also get the audio-only versions of these shows wherever you get your podcasts. And you can follow us at growandconvert.com/newsletter for any articles and updates for when these videos come out.